This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Leon Meyer. Essays in Radical Empiricism by William James. Chapter 7. The Essence of Humanism. Humanism is a ferment that has come to stay. It is not a single hypothesis or theorem, and it dwells on no new facts. It is rather a slow shifting in the philosophic perspective, making things appear as from a new center of interest or point of sight. Some writers are strongly conscious of the shifting, others half unconscious, even though their own vision may have undergone much change. The result is no small confusion in debate, the half-conscious humanists often taking part against the radical ones, as if they wished to count upon the other side. If humanism really be the name for such a shifting of perspective, it is obvious that the whole scene of the philosophic stage will change in some degree if humanism prevails. The emphasis of things, their foreground and background distribution, their sizes and values, will not keep just the same. If such pervasive consequences be involved in humanism, it is clear that no pains which philosophers may take, first in defining it, and then in furthering, checking, or steering its progress, will be thrown away. It suffers badly at present from incomplete definition. Its most systematic advocates, Schiller and Dewey, have published fragmentary programs only, and its bearing on many vital philosophic problems has not been traced except by adversaries, who, scenting heresies in advance, have showered blows on doctrines, subjectivism and skepticism, for example, that no good humanist finds it necessary to entertain. By their still greater reticences, the anti-humanists have, in turn, perplexed the humanists. Much of the controversy has involved the word truth. It is always good in debate to know your adversary's point of view authentically. But the critics of humanism never define exactly what the word truth signifies when they use it themselves. The humanists have to guess at their view, and the result has doubtless been much beating of the air. Add to all this great individual differences in both camps, and it becomes clear that nothing is so urgently needed at the stage which things have reached at present, as a sharper definition by each side of its central point of view. Whoever will contribute any touch of sharpness will help us to make sure of what's what and who is who. Anyone can contribute such a definition, and without it, no one knows exactly where he stands. If I offer my own provisional definition of humanism now and here, others may improve it. Some adversary may be led to define his own creed more sharply by the contrast, and a certain quickening of the crystallization of general opinion may result. Section 1. The essential service of humanism, as I conceive the situation, is to have seen that though one part of our experience may lean upon another part, to make it what it is in any one of several aspects in which it may be considered, experience as a whole is self-containing and leans on nothing. Since this formula also expresses the main contention of transcendental idealism, it needs abundant explication to make it unambiguous. It seems at first sight to confine itself to denying theism and pantheism, but in fact it need not deny either. Everything would depend on the exegesis, and if the formula ever became canonical, it would certainly develop both right-wing and left-wing interpreters. I myself read humanism theistically and pluralistically. If there be a God, he is no absolute all-experiencer, but simply the experiencer of widest actual conscious span. Read thus, humanism is for me a religion susceptible of reasoned defense, though I am well aware how many minds there are to whom it can appeal religiously only when it has been monistically translated. Ethically, the pluralistic form of it takes for me a stronger hold on reality than any other philosophy I know of, it being essentially a social philosophy, a philosophy of in which conjunctions do the work. But my primary reason for advocating it is its matchless intellectual economy. It gets rid not only of the standing problems that monism engenders, problem of evil, problem of freedom, and the like, but of other metaphysical mysteries and paradoxes as well. It gets rid, for example, of the whole agnostic controversy by refusing to entertain the hypothesis of trans-empirical reality at all. It gets rid of any need for an absolute of the Bradleian type, avowedly sterile for intellectual purposes, by insisting that the conjunctive relations found within experience are faultlessly real. It gets rid of the need of an absolute of the Roycian type, similarly sterile, by its pragmatic treatment of the problem of knowledge, a treatment of which I have already given a version in 2 very inadequate articles. As the views of knowledge, reality, and truth imputed to humanism have been those so far most fiercely attacked, it is in regard to those ideas that a sharpening of focus seems most urgently required. I proceed, therefore, to bring the views which I impute to humanism in these respects into focus as briefly as I can. Section 2. If the central humanistic thesis, printed above in italics, be accepted, it will follow that, if there be any such thing at all as knowing, the knower and the object known must both be portions of experience. One part of experience must, therefore, either 1. Know another part of experience, in other words, parts must, as Professor Woodbridge says, represent one another instead of representing realities outside of consciousness. This case is that of conceptual knowledge. Or else 2. They must simply exist as so many ultimate thats or facts of being in the first instance, and then as a secondary complication, and without doubling up its entitative singleness, any one and the same that must figure alternately as a thing known and as a knowledge of the thing, by reason of 2 divergent kinds of context into which, in the general course of experience, it gets woven. Footnote. This statement is probably excessively obscure to anyone who has not read my 2 articles, Does Consciousness Exist? And A World of Pure Experience. End footnote. The second case is that of sense perception. There is a stage of thought that goes beyond common sense, and of it I shall say more presently. But the common sense stage is a perfectly definite halting place of thought, primarily for purposes of action. And so long as we remain on the common sense stage of thought, object and subject fuse in the fact of presentation, or sense perception. The pen and hand which I now see writing, for example, are the physical realities which those words designate. In this case there is no self-transcendency implied in the knowing. Humanism here is only a more comminuted Identitätsphilosophie. In case 1, on the contrary, the representative experience does transcend itself in knowing the other experience, that is its object. No one can talk of the knowledge of the one by the other without seeing them as numerically distinct entities, of which the one lies beyond the other and away from it, along some direction and with some interval that can be definitely named. But if the talker be a humanist, he must also see this distance interval concretely and pragmatically, and confess it to consist of other intervening experiences, of possible ones, at all events, if not actual. To call my present idea of my dog, for example, cognitive of the real dog, means that as the actual tissue of experience is constituted, the idea is capable of leading into a chain of other experiences on my part that go from next to next, and terminate at last in vivid sense perceptions of a jumping, barking, hairy body. Those are the real dog, the dog's full presence for my common sense. If the supposed talker is a profound philosopher, although they may not be the real dog for him, they mean the real dog, are practical substitutes for the real dog, as the representation was a practical substitute for them, that real dog being a lot of atoms, say, or of mind stuff, that lie where the sense perceptions lie in his experience as well as in my own. Section 3. The philosopher here stands